The sky over New Chicago was on fire when the last ship left Earth. Captain Elena Voss stood on the bridge of the Wanderer, watching the planet shrink behind her through the rear viewport. Smoke covered half the world. Bright lines of plasma fire cut through the clouds where the Coalition warships were still bombing the surface, even though the surface no longer had anything left to defend. The war had lasted 6 years. It ended in 1 week. She did not cry. She had cried 3 days ago, when the last human colony on Mars went dark. There were no tears left in her now, only a cold, quiet anger that sat in her chest like a stone. "Captain," said Doran, her pilot, a thin man with tired eyes, "we're at the edge of the debris field. If we don't jump now, their fleet will catch us." "Jump," Elena said. The Wanderer was not a warship. It was an old science vessel, built for slow, careful study of far stars, not for battle and not for running. But it was the only ship that had escaped the fall of Earth, with its systems still working. Everything else had been destroyed, captured, or left burning in orbit. Doran's hands moved over the controls. The stars outside the viewport stretched into long white lines, then vanished, and the Wanderer dropped into the strange gray nothing of faster-than-light travel. For a moment, everyone on the bridge breathed out at the same time. "We made it," said Rana, the ship's engineer, from her station near the back. She was young, barely 25, and her voice shook a little. "We actually made it out." "For now," Elena said. She looked around the bridge. 6 people. 6 people were all that remained of her command crew. Somewhere in the cargo hold, 41 more humans slept in cryopods, the last survivors pulled from the ruins of 3 different cities in the final hours before the surrender. Scientists, children, an old teacher, a young couple who had been married only 2 weeks before the invasion began. 47 humans in total, on one ship, running from an enemy that controlled more than 600 worlds. It should have felt hopeless. In some ways it did. But Elena had one thing that gave her a reason to keep running, instead of giving up. It sat in a locked case in her quarters, wrapped in insulated cloth, guarded day and night by a rotating watch. She had promised herself she would not think about it until they were safely away. Now, with the jump complete, she allowed herself a moment to remember why any of this mattered. 3 months ago, a research team on the edge of human space had found something buried under the ice of a dead moon. It was not human. It was not anything from any species in the records of the Assembly, the great alliance of alien governments that ruled most of the galaxy. It was old, older than anything anyone alive had ever seen, and when the scientists studied it, they found that it was a kind of key, a key to a door that had been sealed for longer than human civilization had existed. The Assembly wanted it. That was the real reason for the invasion, though the official reason given to the galaxy was different. The Assembly said humans were dangerous, unpredictable, a young species that had grown too fast, too aggressive, too willing to fight back when other species pushed them around. The truth was simpler and colder. Humanity had found something the most powerful empire in the galaxy wanted for itself, and humanity had refused to hand it over. So the fleets came. Hundreds of warships, from a dozen different species, all serving under the Assembly banner, all obeying orders from a government that had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. Earth did not stand a chance. No one had expected it to. The only real question had been whether anyone would escape with the key still in human hands. Elena had made sure someone did. "Set a course," she said to Doran. "Anywhere. As long as it's away from here." "Away from here, how far, Captain?" Elena looked at the old star charts on the display, faded blue lines, showing systems that humanity had barely begun to explore before the war started. Beyond them was a great open darkness, thousands of light-years of space that no human ship had ever crossed. The Assembly's territory stretched across the galaxy in every direction humanity knew. But there was one direction no one had mapped. One direction that led toward the far side of the galaxy, past the edge of everything known. "There," Elena said, pointing to the empty dark space on the chart. "We go there. We keep going until we find somewhere they can't follow." Doran looked at her for a long moment. "Captain, that's most of the galaxy. We don't know what's out there." "Neither does the Assembly," Elena said. "That's the point." 3 systems away, in the flagship of Fleet Commander Threx Valen, the mood was very different. Threx was Cathari, a species that stood taller than most humans, with gray skin and 4 eyes set in 2 pairs, 1 pair for near sight and 1 for far. He had served the assembly for over 100 years, longer than most humans lived in total, and in that time he had crushed 11 rebellions and conquered 4 worlds in the name of assembly order. He was proud of his record. He did not like that it was about to be broken by a single ship from a species barely 200 years into space travel. "Report," he said, his voice a low rumble through the translator collar around his neck. His second officer, a smaller Cathari named Ses, bowed slightly before speaking. "The human ship escaped the blockade, Commander. It jumped before our forces could close the trap." "How?" "We do not know, Commander. Their ship was old, slow, not built for combat. By every measure, it should not have been able to outrun our fleet." Threx's 4 eyes narrowed. He walked to the viewport of his flagship, looking out at the burning remains of what had once been called Earth. Fires still glowed on the night side of the planet. Assembly troops moved across the surface, securing what was left, taking what prisoners remained. It was, by any measure, a complete victory. Except for the one thing that mattered most. "The artifact," Threx said. "Where is it?" Ses hesitated before answering. "Our intelligence believes it is aboard the ship that escaped, Commander. The Wanderer, Captain Elena Voss." Threx said nothing for a long moment. Then he turned, his gray face calm, though anyone who had served with him long enough knew that calm was more dangerous than anger. "Then we are not finished here," he said. "We were sent to conquer a planet. That is done. Now we have a new mission. Find that ship. Find the human captain who thinks she can run from the assembly, and bring me the artifact, whatever it costs." "Yes, Commander. Shall I signal the other fleets in the sector?" Threx considered this. It would mean sharing credit, sharing the glory of recovering the artifact with other commanders, other species. He did not like the idea, but he liked the idea of failure even less. "Signal them," he said. "Every fleet within range. 1 ship, unarmed, alone in the dark. It will not be difficult to find. And when we do, the galaxy will remember that no one runs from the assembly and lives to tell the story." The Wanderer moved deeper into unknown space over the following weeks. Elena kept the ship on a steady course, away from the last known assembly border, following star patterns that no human astronomer had ever charted before. The crew settled into a routine, though it was a strange and heavy one, made of grief and fear in equal measure. Rana spent most of her hours in the engine room, coaxing more speed and more efficiency out of a ship that had never been designed for a journey like this. She was good at her work, one of the best engineers Earth had trained before the fall, and she treated the Wanderer's systems like a patient that needed constant care. "She's not built for this," Rana told Elena one evening, wiping grease from her hands. "The engines are meant for short jumps, careful survey work. If we keep pushing them the way we have, we'll wear something out eventually. Might be a month, might be a year, but eventually, something breaks. Then we fix it when it breaks," Elena said. "With what parts, Captain? We're not exactly near a supply depot." Elena did not have a good answer for that. She simply nodded and moved on, because there was nothing else to do. The ship had to keep moving. Stopping meant waiting to be found, and being found meant the end of everything they had sacrificed to protect. It was Doran who first noticed the signal. He was on a late shift, alone on the bridge except for the low hum of the ship's systems, when a strange pulse appeared on the long-range sensors. It was faint, coming from somewhere ahead of the Wanderer's current course, not behind them where the assembly fleets would be. It repeated in a pattern too regular to be natural, but too strange to be any language the ship's translator recognized. He called Elena to the bridge. "What is it?" she asked, still half asleep, wrapped in a jacket against the cold of the ship's night cycle. "I don't know, Captain. It's not assembly. The pattern doesn't match anything in our database, but it's definitely artificial. Something out there is transmitting, and it's been transmitting for a long time, judging by how weak the signal is by the time it reaches us." Elena studied the readout. The source was still many light years away, somewhere in the direction they were already traveling. She thought about turning the ship aside, avoiding whatever was out there, staying safely unseen. But safety was becoming a smaller and smaller idea the longer she thought about it. They could not hide forever. Eventually, the assembly would find them, or they would run out of supplies, or the ship itself would fail under the strain Rana had warned her about. "Keep the course," Elena said finally. "Let's see what's transmitting." Behind them, the hunt had already begun to grow. Threx Valoon's call had gone out across a dozen star systems, carried through the Assembly's relay network faster than any single ship could travel. Fleet commanders across the region received the same message. A human ship, alone and unarmed, carrying an artifact of enormous value, had escaped the fall of Earth and was fleeing into unmapped space. Any commander who found it and recovered the artifact would be rewarded beyond measure. Any commander who failed to pursue would answer for it. Not every species in the Assembly loved the idea of hunting a defenseless ship across the stars. Some commanders were simply loyal soldiers who did what they were told without question. Others saw an opportunity, a chance to rise in status by succeeding where a proud old warrior like Threx might fail. And a few, quietly, in ways they did not say out loud to their crews, felt something closer to curiosity than duty. Because word had also begun to spread, in the quiet channels used by traders and smugglers and the many oppressed peoples who lived under Assembly rule, that a small, weak, newly discovered species called humanity had refused to give up their world without a fight. That the Assembly, with all its fleets and all its centuries of conquest, had needed 6 years and hundreds of warships to finally break one single planet, and that even then, one ship had slipped through their grasp and vanished into the dark, carrying something the most powerful empire in the galaxy desperately wanted back. To the free peoples of the Assembly's many conquered worlds, this was not just a military failure. It was the first crack of light they had seen in a very long time. On a mining station near the edge of Assembly space, a young Vakari trader named Is listened to the reports coming through on an illegal relay feed and found himself smiling for the first time in months. "One ship," he said quietly to his crewmate. "One little ship, and the whole Assembly is chasing it across the galaxy." "So what?" his crewmate said. "They'll catch it eventually. They always do." Is shook his head slowly, still watching the flickering data on the screen. Somewhere out there, past the edge of the maps he had ever seen, a lone human ship was running from the greatest power in the galaxy and refusing to stop. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe not. I think I want to see how this one ends." He was not the only one. Across 100 systems, quietly, word of the human ship began to travel from ear to ear, terminal to terminal, station to station. Not everyone who heard the story wanted to hunt the Wanderer down. Some of them wanted to follow it for entirely different reasons. Weeks passed aboard the Wanderer. The signal Doran had detected grew stronger as the ship pressed on, though its meaning remained a mystery. Elena ordered the ship's linguist, a soft-spoken older man named Tomas, who had once studied dead languages back on Earth, to work on decoding it in every spare hour he had. Meanwhile, life aboard the ship settled into something like an uneasy rhythm. The 41 survivors in cryo remained asleep, their pods carefully monitored by Rana's assistant, a nervous young man named Petter, who checked the readings obsessively, terrified of losing even one more human life after so many had already been lost. Elena spent her nights going over what little intelligence they had gathered about the artifact before the fall of Earth. The scientists who first found it were dead now, or captured, their notes scattered and incomplete, but what remained painted a strange picture. The artifact was not a weapon, not exactly. It did not explode or burn or destroy. What it did, as far as anyone could tell, was open things, doors, pathways, connections between places that should not have been connected at all. She did not fully understand it. She was not sure anyone alive did. But she understood enough to know that the Assembly's fear of it and their hunger for it were both entirely real. One evening, as the ship drifted quietly through a starless stretch of space, Elena found herself standing before the locked case that held the artifact. She had not opened it since leaving Earth. She was almost afraid to. It felt, in some strange way, like the only piece of her homeworld she still carried with her, and opening it meant facing what that homeworld had cost. "Captain," Rana's voice came softly from the doorway. "You should get some rest." "I will," Elena said, not turning around. "Soon." Rana stepped closer, standing beside her. For a while, neither of them spoke. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Rana finally asked. "Running instead of staying to fight?" Elena thought about the burning sky over New Chicago, the smoke, the silence that had followed the surrender. She thought about the 47 lives sleeping quietly in the cargo hold behind them, and the locked case in front of her, and the long dark road still ahead. "I don't know," she said honestly. But we're still here. As long as we're still here, there's still a chance to make it mean something. Far behind them, unseen, the first assembly scout ships were beginning to enter the outer edge of the unmapped region the Wanderer had crossed weeks before. And far ahead of them, the mysterious signal continued its slow, steady pulse into the dark, waiting, as it had waited for longer than anyone could guess, for someone to finally answer. The chase across the galaxy had only just begun. The signal grew clearer with every passing day, though its meaning was still a mystery. Tomas worked through the ship's small library of language data, comparing the pulses against every pattern he had, but nothing matched. It was not a voice. It was not a message in the way humans understood messages. It was closer to a heartbeat, slow and steady, coming from somewhere far ahead in the dark. "It's old," Tomas told Elena one morning, rubbing his eyes after another sleepless night. "Older than anything we've ever recorded." "I don't think it was made by any species the Assembly has ever met, Captain. I think it might be older than the Assembly itself." Elena sat across from him in the small mess hall, a cup of recycled coffee cooling in her hands. "Can you tell what it wants?" "I don't think it wants anything," Tomas said. "I think it's just calling, the way a lighthouse calls to ships, whether or not anyone answers." It was a strange thought, and it stayed with Elena as she walked the corridors of the Wanderer. Later that day, a lighthouse in the dark, calling out across the stars for longer than any living species could remember. She thought about the key in the locked case in her quarters, and wondered, not for the first time, if the two things were connected, a door and a light showing the way to it. It made a kind of sense, though she had no proof. Doran interrupted her thoughts with an urgent call to the bridge. "Captain, you need to see this." She hurried up, finding Doran and Rana already staring at the main viewport. Ahead of the ship, still distant but growing closer, was a planet unlike anything Elena had expected to find in this empty stretch of space. It had the soft blue-green glow of a living world, oceans and continents visible even from this distance. But circling it were structures that were clearly not natural. Rings of metal, vast platforms, the unmistakable shapes of orbital stations. "Someone lives here," Rana said quietly. "Or used to," Doran added. "Look closer, Captain. Some of those stations look damaged, burned out." Elena leaned forward, studying the image. He was right. Several of the orbital platforms showed signs of old battle damage, scorched metal and broken sections drifting free. Whatever had happened here had happened a long time ago, the wounds long cold, but never repaired. "Bring us in slow," Elena ordered. "Full sensor sweep. I want to know what we're dealing with before we get any closer." As the Wanderer approached, the picture became clearer and more troubling. The world below, which the ship's sensors eventually identified through a translated distress marker as Keth Orin, was inhabited, but it did not look free. Assembly markings, faded but still visible, covered several of the largest stations. Ships moved in slow, careful patrols around the planet, their designs unfamiliar to the sea. Wanderer's database, but their purpose unmistakable. This was occupied territory. A conquered world, much like Earth had briefly been before its fall, kept under careful watch by a distant power. "This is assembly space," Elena said slowly. "We're not past the border. We're inside it." "That can't be right," Doran said, checking his charts again. "Our course took us away from every mapped assembly system." "Maybe the maps are wrong," Rana said. "Or maybe the assembly is bigger than anyone back home ever guessed." Elena felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. If the assembly's territory stretched even into this remote, unmapped region, then there might be no direction left to run that would truly take them beyond its reach. The galaxy might belong to the assembly from edge to edge, and humanity's hope of finding safety somewhere beyond its borders might have been nothing more than a comforting story she had told herself and her crew. But there was no turning back now. Behind them, somewhere in the dark, assembly hunters were closing in. Ahead of them lay occupied space, and an unknown signal calling from somewhere deeper still. The only way was forward. "Keep us quiet," Elena said. "Passive sensors only. We go around this system, not through it. I don't want their patrols to even know we were here." It was a good plan. It did not work. The patrol ship that spotted the Wanderer belonged to a species called the Orin. the original inhabitants of the world below, now serving as low-ranking auxiliary forces within the assembly military. Their commander, a weathered old Orin named Fessa, had served the assembly for most of her long life, not because she believed in its cause, but because refusing meant worse things happened to her people. Unknown contact, her sensor officer reported. Small vessel, unfamiliar design, not in any of our records. Fessa studied the readout with tired eyes. In 30 years of patrol duty, she had seen very few truly unknown ships. Smugglers, sometimes. The occasional lost trader. But this design was different, strange in a way that made her pause. "Hail it," she said. There was no response. The unknown ship continued on its course, moving carefully around the edge of the system, clearly trying to avoid detection, and clearly failing. "Orders, Commander?" her officer asked. Fessa thought for a long moment. Standard procedure was clear. Any unidentified vessel entering assembly-controlled space was to be intercepted, boarded, and its crew questioned, or destroyed if it resisted. She had followed that procedure 100 times before, without hesitation, because hesitation meant trouble for her and her family. But something about this felt different. She had heard the rumors, passed quietly through the ranks of auxiliary forces across a dozen systems, about a human ship that had escaped the fall of a world called Earth, carrying something the assembly wanted badly enough to send half its fleets chasing after it. She had dismissed the story as exaggeration, the kind of tale that grew larger with every telling. But looking at the unknown ship on her screen, old, small, clearly not built for war, she found herself wondering. "Hail it again," she said. Tell them we mean no harm, if they answer honestly." It was not standard procedure. It was, in fact, exactly the kind of thing that could get her removed from command if her assembly superiors ever learned of it. But Fessa had spent 30 years enforcing rules she did not believe in, and something in her, old and tired as she was, wanted to know the truth before she decided what to do next. Aboard the Wanderer. The sudden hail caught Elena off guard. "Captain, incoming transmission," Doran said. "From the patrol ship, it's not demanding surrender. It's asking us to identify ourselves." Elena exchanged a look with Rana. This was not what either of them had expected. "Put it through," Elena said. The image that appeared on the screen showed an alien face, unlike anything the crew of the Wanderer had encountered before, long and narrow, with deep-set eyes, and skin the color of old copper. The translation software struggled for a moment before finding a workable match. "This is Patrol Commander Fessa of the Orin Auxiliary Fleet." The voice came through, flat and careful. "You have entered restricted assembly space. State your origin and your purpose." Elena considered lying. It would have been easy enough, and safer, to claim to be a lost trader or an unaligned explorer. But something about the careful, almost hesitant way the alien commander had spoken made her decide, against every instinct of caution, to tell the truth. "This is Captain Elena Voss, of the human vessel Wanderer," she said. "We are not here to cause trouble. We came from a world called Earth. Perhaps you've heard of it." There was a long pause on the other end. When Fessa spoke again, her voice had changed, something sharper and more alert in it. "The human ship," Fessa said slowly. "The one that escaped the fall of your world." "Yes." Another pause, longer this time. Elena's hand hovered near the console, ready to order the ship into a jump if the situation turned dangerous. But when Fessa spoke again, it was not a threat. "I am supposed to detain you," Fessa said. "Report your position to Assembly Command. Hold you here until a proper war fleet arrives to take you into custody." "Are you going to?" Elena asked. The silence that followed felt like it lasted an hour, though it could not have been more than a few seconds. "My people have lived under Assembly rule for 200 years, Fessa said finally. "In that time, I have never once seen a species stand against them the way I hear yours did. 6 years, they say. 6 years to conquer one small world, when most fall in 6 days." She paused. "I do not know what you carry, Captain Voss, or why the Assembly wants you so badly, but I find that I am not eager to be the one who hands you over to them." Elena felt something loosen in her chest, a tension she had been carrying since the moment they left Earth's atmosphere. Thank you, she said quietly. Do not thank me yet, Fessa said. I cannot help you beyond this. My ship is old, my crew is small, and there are other patrols in this system who will not hesitate the way I have. Leave quickly, Captain, before someone with less patience than me finds you. She hesitated again, then added, but I will tell you this. Word of your escape has already reached further than you might think. There are many worlds under assembly rule who would celebrate a species bold enough to defy them. If you survive this journey, you may find you have more friends out there than you expect. The transmission ended. Elena stood on the bridge for a long moment, processing what had just happened. Well, Rana said finally, that was not what I expected. No, Elena agreed. Set a course out of this system, Doran. Best speed, before that commander changes her mind, or someone else finds us first. They left the Orin system without further incident, but Fessa's words stayed with Elena for the rest of the journey. You may find you have more friends out there than you expect. It was a strange kind of hope, fragile and uncertain, but it was more than she had allowed herself to feel since the fall of Earth. The Wanderer pressed on, deeper into the vast stretch of assembly territory that the crew had not known existed, following the pulse of the mysterious signal that grew stronger with every passing week. Along the way, they passed the edges of 3 more inhabited systems, each one showing the same signs of old conquest, the same faded assembly markings, the same careful patrols keeping watch over populations that had long since stopped fighting back. But something began to change as the Wanderer moved through this space. It started small, a patrol ship that spotted them but did not report the contact, a relay station that seemed to lose track of their signal at a convenient moment, a supply outpost where, against every expectation, a group of alien traders quietly redirected fuel and parts toward the Wanderer's docking bay without ever officially logging the transaction, whispering only that they had heard the stories and wanted, in their own small way, to help. Rana, working around the clock to keep the aging ship's systems functioning, found herself grateful beyond words for the unexpected supplies. I don't understand it, she told Elena one evening, checking over a shipment of parts that had appeared at their last stop with no explanation, beyond a short message wishing them well. Why would they risk helping us? They don't know us. We're strangers. We're not even the same species. Maybe that's exactly why, Elena said. We're proof that the assembly can be defied. Even if it cost us everything. Even if we're still running. The fact that we're still out here running is enough to matter to people who've given up hope of ever fighting back. It was a heavy thing to carry. The weight of being a symbol for people she had never met, on worlds she had never seen, for a cause she had never chosen. But there was something steadying in it too. They were not simply running for their own survival anymore. Whether she had asked for it or not, the Wanderer had become something larger than one ship and 47 sleeping survivors. Behind them, the pursuit continued to grow. Threx Valen's fleet had been joined by 2 others, commanders eager to claim credit for recovering the artifact and ending the embarrassment of a single unarmed ship evading the assembly's grasp for so long. Reports of the human ship's passage through occupied systems reached Assembly Command with growing frequency, each one more troubling than the last, not because the Wanderer posed any real military threat, but because of what its survival seemed to be inspiring in the conquered populations it passed through. They are not simply running, Threx said grimly to his officers, studying the latest reports. They are leaving a trail of sympathy behind them. Every system they pass through, whispers follow. This has gone beyond a simple recovery mission. What are your orders, Commander? Sess asked. Threx's 4 eyes fixed on the star chart before him, tracing the long, twisting path the human ship had carved through assembly space. A path that seemed, almost impossibly, to be leading somewhere with purpose, rather than simply fleeing at random. Increase the pursuit, he said. I want every fleet in 3 sectors converging on their projected course, and find out what that ship is actually heading toward. A creature does not run blindly forever. Eventually, it runs toward something. I want to know what it is before they get there. Far ahead of both the hunted and the hunters, the ancient signal continued its slow, patient pulse into the dark, waiting for the Wanderer to close the distance that still remained. The trouble found them near a system the star charts called only by a number, a small red star, with 3 dead worlds, and 1 moon, that showed faint signs of atmosphere. It was there, refueling quietly, at what looked like an abandoned mining outpost, that the Wanderer nearly lost everything. Elena had sent Doran and 2 others down to the outpost to search for parts, while Rana stayed aboard to monitor the engines, which had begun making a low, worrying sound over the past several days. It was meant to be a simple stop, quick and quiet, the kind of stop they had made a dozen times already on the long road across assembly space. It was Petter, watching the sensor board while everyone else worked, who saw the ships appear. "Captain!" His voice cracked with fear as he called through the ship's comm. "Multiple contacts, closing fast. They're not patrol ships, they're warships, at least 6 of them." Elena was in the cargo hold when the alarm sounded, checking on the cryopods as she did every day. She dropped what she was doing and ran for the bridge, reaching it just as the first hard tremor of an incoming weapons lock shook the ship. "Get Doran and the others back aboard, now," she ordered. "They won't make it in time," Rana said grimly, watching the approaching warships close the distance on the main screen. "Captain, those are assembly frontline ships. We can't outrun 6 of them, not with our engines the way they are." Elena's mind raced. Leaving without Doran was unthinkable. Staying meant capture, or worse, for everyone aboard, including the 41 souls still sleeping in the cargo hold. There seemed to be no good choice at all. Then, without warning, the situation changed. A new set of contacts appeared on the sensor display. Smaller ships, fast and heavily modified, dropping out of hiding from behind the outpost's largest structure, where they had apparently been waiting, unseen, the entire time. There were perhaps a dozen of them, nothing like the size of the assembly warships, but fast and aggressive, immediately opening fire on the approaching fleet. "What in the world?" Rana breathed. The new ships were unlike anything the Wanderer used database recognized, sleek and patched together from what looked like a dozen different designs, clearly built by hands that had more determination than resources. They moved with a wild, reckless energy, striking hard at the assembly warships before darting away, using the outpost structure for cover. A voice broke through on an open channel, translated roughly by the Wanderer systems into something close to standard English, thick with static. "Human ship. This is Is of the Freerunners. Get your people and get out. Now, while we hold them off." Elena did not hesitate. "Doran, get to the ship, now." Through the outpost's viewport cameras, she watched Doran and the others sprint across the docking platform under covering fire from the strange, patched-together ships, diving into the Wanderer's open airlock just as it began to seal. The moment the all-clear signal came through, Elena gave the order. "Doran, get us out of here." The Wanderer tore away from the outpost, engines straining under the effort, as behind them, the small, fierce fleet of unknown ships continued their desperate fight against the much larger assembly force, buying every second of distance they could. They did not stop running until they were 3 systems away, deep in a stretch of empty space where the sensors showed no other ships for light years in any direction. Only then did Elena allow herself to breathe, and to wonder about the strange ships that had appeared to save them. The answer came less than an hour later, when a single small vessel dropped out of faster-than-light travel nearby, hailing the Wanderer on the same channel Is had used before. "This is Is, of the Freerunners," the voice said again, clearer now without the static of battle. "Requesting permission to come aboard, Captain Voss. I believe we have much to discuss." Elena looked at Rana, who shrugged, still catching her breath from the chaos of the escape. "Might as well hear him out," Rana said. "He did just save our lives." Is turned out to be a Vakari, a species Elena had never encountered before, slim and quick-moving, with pale green skin, and wide, curious eyes that studied every corner of the Wanderer's bridge with obvious fascination as he was brought aboard. "I have wanted to meet you for weeks," he said, once he stood before Elena in the small conference room off the bridge. "The whole free galaxy has been talking about your ship, Captain, the humans who would not surrender. The ship that keeps outrunning the Assembly's fleets." "Free galaxy?" Elena asked. I thought the assembly controlled everything out here. Is shook his head. A strange but clearly negative gesture he must have adapted from watching other species. The assembly controls a great deal, Captain, but not everything, and not as completely as they would like the galaxy to believe. There are pockets, hidden places, ships, and small stations belonging to people who have slipped free of assembly control, or who were never fully brought under it to begin with. We call ourselves the free runners. We are traders, mostly, smugglers, some of us, a few fighters, when we must be. We survive by staying quiet and staying hidden. And yet you attacked an assembly fleet to save us, Elena said. That doesn't sound quiet or hidden. Is smiled, a strange expression on his narrow face, but clearly meant warmly. Your story reached us weeks ago, Captain. A human ship, alone, unarmed, carrying something so valuable that the assembly has thrown half its military might into recovering it. A ship that has passed through a dozen occupied systems and left behind nothing but sympathy and quiet defiance in its wake. He leaned forward. Do you understand what that means to people like us? To worlds that have lived under assembly rule for generations, who have watched species after species fall and surrender without a fight? You are not just running, Captain Voss. You have become a story. And stories matter, more than you might think, to people who have very little else to hold on to. Elena sat with that for a long moment. It was the second time in recent weeks that someone had told her this, and it still did not feel entirely real to her. The idea that her desperate flight from a burning world had somehow become a symbol for oppressed peoples across the galaxy she had never even known existed. Why help us, though? Rana asked, standing near the doorway. Really, not the noble reasons. What do the free runners actually want from this? Issa's expression turned more serious. A fair question. The truth is, engineer, we are tired. Tired of hiding, tired of watching the assembly grind down every world that tries to resist. We do not have the strength to fight them directly, not yet. But if a story like yours could spread far enough, inspire enough worlds to remember what resistance looks like, it could change things, slowly perhaps, over years. But it could change things. He paused. And there is also the matter of what you carry, Captain. We know the assembly wants it badly. We do not know exactly what it is, but anything the assembly fears that much is something we would very much like to understand. Elena exchanged a glance with Rana. It was a fair trade of honesty, she decided, and one she respected more than empty promises of pure loyalty. I don't fully understand it myself, Elena admitted, but I can tell you what we know. She led Is to her quarters, where the locked case still sat exactly where it had been since they left Earth. For the first time since the escape, she opened it, revealing the artifact inside, a smooth, dark object roughly the size of a human hand, its surface covered in patterns that seemed to shift and move slightly when viewed from different angles, though it never actually changed shape. Is stared at it for a long moment, his wide eyes even wider than before. I have never seen anything like this, he said quietly, and I have seen a great many strange things in my travels. Our scientists believed it was some kind of key, Elena said, a key to a door that's been sealed for a very long time. We don't know what's behind that door. We don't even know where the door is. She hesitated, then added, but we've been following a signal, out here in this direction, that might have something to do with it. It doesn't match anything in the assembly's records, or ours. Issa's expression changed slowly from curiosity to something closer to wonder. There are old stories, he said slowly, among the free peoples who live at the edges of assembly space. Stories about something called the Old Network, a system of connections, built long before the assembly rose to power, built by a civilization so old that even the assembly's oldest records barely mention them. The stories say the network was sealed away, deliberately, because whatever it connected to was too dangerous, or too powerful, to leave open. He looked back at the artifact. If this is truly a key to that network, Captain Voss, then I understand completely why the assembly is willing to burn a dozen worlds to get it back. The revelation changed something in Elena, a shift she could not fully name. Until now, she had understood her mission in simple terms: protect the artifact, keep her crew alive, find somewhere safe beyond the assembly's reach. But if Issa's stories were true, if the artifact truly was connected to something as old and significant as the old network, then the stakes of her journey were larger than she had ever imagined. I need to understand more, she told Is. If there are others among your people who know more about these stories, I need to speak with them. Is nodded slowly. I can arrange that, Captain. There is a place, a hidden gathering point the free runners use, far from any assembly patrol routes. Elders live there who remember stories passed down for many generations. If anyone can tell you more about the old network, it will be them. He paused. But I must warn you, Captain, the Assembly's pursuit will not stop, and the deeper you travel into what remains of unclaimed space, the more attention your journey will draw, both from those who wish to help you, and from those who wish to stop you at any cost. We've come this far, Elena said. We're not turning back now. Is smiled again. That strange but warm expression. No, he agreed. I did not think you would. He returned to his own ship shortly after, promising to guide the wanderer toward the hidden gathering point of the free runners, a journey that would take several more days through increasingly dangerous territory. Elena watched his small vessel take up position ahead of them, a strange kind of escort for a ship that had, until recently, traveled entirely alone. That night, unable to sleep, she found Rana in the engine room, still working on the troublesome engines despite the late hour. You should rest, Elena said. So should you, Rana replied, not looking up from her work. But neither of us is going to, so we might as well keep each other company. She wiped her hands and sat back against the engine housing, looking tired, in a way that went beyond simple lack of sleep. Do you ever think about what happens if we actually find whatever this signal is leading us to? What happens after? Elena considered the question carefully. I used to think about it every day, she admitted. Now, I think I've just been focused on getting there, one day at a time, one jump at a time. And if it's dangerous? If what's behind that door is something even the Assembly is afraid of? Then we'll deal with that when we get there, Elena said. The same as we've dealt with everything else. Rana nodded slowly, though the worry did not fully leave her face. For what it's worth, Captain, I don't regret coming with you. Whatever happens next. Far behind them, Threx Valen's combined fleet continued its relentless pursuit, now numbering more than 20 warships, drawn from 6 different Assembly member species, all converging on the last known trajectory of the human ship. And far ahead, in the hidden gathering places of the free runners and beyond, word continued to spread of the small ship that refused to stop, drawing more eyes, more hope, and more danger, with every light year it crossed. The hidden gathering point of the free runners turned out to be an old asteroid field, scattered around the remains of a shattered planet that must have broken apart long before any recorded history began. Hundreds of ships were tucked into hollowed-out rocks and hidden pockets throughout the field, some large, some barely bigger than a shuttle, all belonging to people who had found ways to live free of Assembly control. Elena had expected suspicion when the wanderer arrived, and she got plenty of it. Ships shadowed them from a distance as Is guided them deeper into the field, and more than once she caught sight of weapons powering up on nearby vessels, only to power down again once Is's ship broadcast some kind of signal she did not fully understand. But beneath the caution, she also felt something else in the air, a current of excitement that seemed to ripple outward from ship to ship as word spread that the human vessel had actually arrived. They've been waiting for you, Is told her, once the wanderer had settled into a docking berth carved into one of the larger asteroids, longer than you might think. The elders Is had spoken of turned out to be a small council of representatives from a dozen different species, all of whom had lived free of Assembly rule for decades, some for generations. They met with Elena in a large chamber at the heart of the asteroid, lit by soft bioluminescent growths along the walls, a room that felt more like a sanctuary than a command center. The oldest among them, a Cathari elder named Orvash, spoke first, her voice slow and careful, weighed down by the accumulated years of a very long life. We have heard many stories over the years, Captain Voss, Orvash said. Stories of species who resisted the Assembly. Most of those stories end the same way. Conquest, surrender, silence. Your story is different. Not because your people won. You did not. But because you refused to let that ending be the final word. I didn't do this to become a story, Elena said. I did it because it was the only choice left. Perhaps, Orvash said, but the meaning of an act is not always decided by the one who performs it. Sometimes, it is decided by those who witness it, and what they choose to do because of what they saw. The council listened carefully as Elena explained everything she knew about the artifact, the signal they had been following, and Issa's stories about the old network. When she finished, a long silence settled over the chamber, broken finally by a second elder, a small, insect-like being whose translated voice carried a strange, musical quality. "The stories of the old network are older than any of us," the elder said. Older, some believe, than the assembly itself. It is said that long before the assembly rose to power, there existed a much larger alliance of species, spread across the whole galaxy, connected by pathways that allowed instant travel between even the most distant stars. It is said this alliance fell, not through war with an outside enemy, but through something that came from within the network itself, something so dangerous that the surviving species chose to seal the entire network away, rather than risk it happening again. "Sealed it away with what?" Elena asked. "With keys," the insect-like elder said. "Scattered across the galaxy, hidden on worlds far from the old central hubs, so that no single power could ever gather them all, and open the network again without great difficulty. If what you carry is truly one of these keys, Captain Voss, then the Assembly's desperation to recover it makes a terrible kind of sense. They do not merely want an artifact, they want the power that a fully reopened network would grant them. Absolute dominance, not merely over the worlds they already control, but over the entire galaxy, instantly, without the years of slow conquest they have relied upon until now." The weight of this settled heavily over the room. Elena thought of Threx Valen's fleet, growing larger with every system they passed through, and understood for the first time the true scale of what she carried, and what was at stake if it ever fell into Assembly hands. "Then we can't let them have it," she said quietly, "whatever it takes." Orvash nodded slowly. "This council agrees, Captain. But you should understand, this is no longer a matter that concerns only your ship, or your people. If the Assembly recovers this key, the consequences will fall on every free world in the galaxy, and many that are not yet free as well. We cannot simply hide you here. We must decide, together, what should be done next." The council debated for hours, long past when Elena's exhausted crew had returned to the Wanderer. To rest, Elena stayed, listening to arguments in a dozen different languages, watching representatives of species she had never even heard of weigh options that would affect the fate of worlds she would never see. It was strange and humbling, being at the center of decisions so much larger than herself, and she found herself grateful, more than anything, that these people had chosen to include her at all, rather than simply taking the artifact and sending her away. In the end, the council reached a decision that surprised her. "The signal you have been following," Orvash said, once the debate finally settled. "We believe we know what it is. There are old records, fragments really, passed down through generations of free peoples, describing a place at the far edge of the galaxy, called the Wellspring. It is said to be one of the great central hubs of the old network, the largest and most important of them all. If the signal you follow leads there, Captain Voss, then it is very likely the true destination of your journey, whether you knew it or not." "How far is it?" Elena asked. "Far," the insect-like elder said. "Many weeks of travel, even with a fast ship, and your engines, we understand, are not what they once were." "Then we'll make it work," Elena said. "We've come this far." "You will not go alone," Orvash said, and for the first time since the meeting began, something like a smile crossed her weathered Cathari face. "This council has decided. We will gather what ships we can, and we will escort you to the Wellspring. Not to fight the Assembly directly, we are not strong enough for that, not yet, but to see you safely there, and to bear witness to whatever waits at the end of this journey." Elena felt something tighten in her throat, an emotion she had not expected. "Why would you risk so much for us? For people you barely know?" Orvash's expression softened. "Because for the first time in longer than I can remember, Captain Voss, your story has given many worlds a reason to hope again. That is worth more than you might understand, to those of us who have lived so long without it." Word of the council's decision spread quickly through the hidden gathering point, and within 2 days, dozens of ships had gathered to join the escort, more arriving from distant hiding places throughout the region as the news reached them. It was not a war fleet, not by any measure that would impress Threx Valen's assembly forces. a patchwork collection of smugglers, traders, and old rebel vessels, none of them built for direct battle against the Assembly's disciplined warships. But it was something the Assembly had never had to account for before. Dozens of separate, hidden groups, scattered across a huge stretch of space, suddenly united by a single shared purpose. Is found Elena on the Wanderer's observation deck the night before their departure, watching the strange, mismatched fleet gathering in the space around the asteroid field. "It's not much of an army," he admitted, standing beside her. "It's more than I expected to have," Elena said. "More than I thought we'd ever have, honestly, when we left Earth. The Assembly fleet chasing you is still much larger," Is said. "Commander Threx has gathered support from 6 different member species now. Word reaches us even out here. He is not a commander who gives up easily." "Neither am I," Elena said quietly. Is studied her for a moment, then nodded, as if satisfied by something he saw in her expression. "No," he agreed. "I don't suppose you are." The following morning, the strange fleet departed the asteroid field together, the Wanderer. At its center, surrounded by dozens of ships from a dozen different species, all moving toward the distant edge of the galaxy, where the signal continued its slow, patient pulse, growing stronger with every day that passed. Behind them, Threx Valen received the news of the gathering fleet with a mixture of fury and grim satisfaction. "They think a collection of smugglers and outlaws can protect them," he said to his officers, studying the latest intelligence reports. "This changes nothing. It only makes the eventual victory more complete." "Commander," Sess said carefully, "the reports suggest the human ship's fleet, however small, has drawn significant attention across multiple sectors. Several other Assembly commanders have expressed concern about the growing scale of this pursuit. Some have suggested a different approach might be wiser than continued force." Threx's 4 eyes turned sharply toward his second officer. "Explain." "Some believe that continuing to chase a symbol only strengthens that symbol, Commander. That the longer this pursuit continues, and the more attention it draws, the more damage is being done to Assembly authority across occupied territories, regardless of whether we eventually succeed in recovering the artifact." Threx considered this for a long moment, his anger cooling into something colder and more calculating. He was not a foolish commander, whatever else he might be. He understood the danger Sess was describing, the risk that a growing legend might do more harm to Assembly rule than the artifact itself ever could, regardless of its true power. But he also understood something else, something that mattered more to him personally than any strategic calculation. He had spent 100 years building his reputation as an unstoppable enforcer of Assembly order. To abandon this pursuit now, after everything, would mean admitting that a single human ship and its gathered allies had defeated him. That was not something Threx Valen was prepared to accept, whatever the wider cost might be. "We press on," he said. "Signal every fleet in range. I want overwhelming force ready by the time they reach whatever destination they are heading toward. Whatever waits at the end of this chase, I intend to be there first, and I intend to end this, once and for all." The order went out across the stars, and slowly, steadily, from a dozen different directions, more Assembly warships began converging on the same distant point in space that the Wanderer and its strange escort fleet were racing toward. Behind them, oppressed worlds across the region watched and waited, word of the gathering forces spreading faster than either side could control, as the entire region held its breath for what was coming. Far ahead, at the very edge of mapped space, the ancient signal grew stronger still, as if sensing, after countless ages of silence, that its long wait was finally coming to an end. The wellspring was not what anyone expected. After weeks of travel, the strange escort fleet finally reached the far edge of the galaxy, a region so distant that even the oldest star charts among the freerunners held only rough guesses about what might be found there. What they found was a structure unlike anything Elena had ever seen, a vast ring, larger than most planets, floating silently in empty space, its surface covered in the same shifting patterns as the artifact locked in the case aboard the Wanderer. Around it, faint and pale, hung the remains of what must once have been a great gathering of ships and stations, now nothing but drifting wreckage, frozen in place, for longer than any living memory could reach. It's beautiful, Rana whispered, staring at the massive ring through the Wanderer's main viewport. And terrifying. Both, I think, Elena said quietly. The signal they had followed across half the galaxy was coming from the ring itself, stronger now than ever before, a steady pulse that seemed to resonate through the very hull of the ship. Tomas, working frantically at his station, finally managed to translate a fragment of the pattern, though what it revealed only deepened the mystery. It's not a message, he said, his voice tight with excitement and unease. It's a lock. The signal is holding something closed, Captain. Not calling anything open. The whole structure has been sealed, deliberately, and it's been sealing itself, over and over, for longer than I can even guess. Then why did it lead us here? Elena asked. I don't think it led us anywhere, Tomas said slowly. I think we followed it because we had the key. I think the key responds to the lock, not the other way around. Before Elena could fully process what that meant, the ship's sensors erupted with new contacts, dozens of them, then hundreds, dropping out of faster-than-light travel, all around the wellspring. The assembly fleet had arrived, and it was larger than anything Elena had imagined, warship after warship taking up position around the ancient ring, their combined firepower more than enough to erase every ship in her small escort fleet within minutes. At the center of the massive formation, Threx Valen's flagship moved forward, broadcasting an open channel to every ship in the system. Captain Voss, Threx's voice came through, cold and certain. You have led us on a long chase, and I will admit, a more interesting one than I expected from your species. But it ends here. Surrender the artifact, and I will allow your escort fleet to withdraw unharmed. Resist, and I will destroy every ship gathered here, beginning with your own. Elena looked around the bridge at her crew, then out at the small, mismatched fleet surrounding the Wanderer. Ships full of people who had risked everything to bring her this far. She thought of Earth, burning behind her, and of the 41 survivors still sleeping in the cargo hold, trusting her to see them safely through whatever came next. She opened a channel of her own, broadcasting to every ship in the system, assembly and ally alike. Commander Threx, she said, her voice steady, despite the fear tightening her chest. You chased my ship across half the galaxy, because you believed the artifact I carry would give the assembly the power to rule everything, forever, without question. Maybe you're right, maybe it would, but I've spent the last several months meeting people who've spent their whole lives under assembly rule, hoping for nothing more than the chance to be free of it. I don't think handing you more power is going to help any of them. And I don't think handing you more power is going to help my people either, whatever remains of us. Sentiment will not save you, Captain, Threx said. Surrender the artifact. No, Elena said simply. For a moment, silence hung over the system. Then Threx gave the order, and the assembly fleet opened fire. The battle that followed was unlike anything the region had seen in generations. Threx's warships, disciplined and overwhelming in number, tore into the smaller, patchwork escort fleet with brutal efficiency. Ships that had once been quiet smugglers and traders fought back with a desperation and courage that surprised even themselves, weaving between the massive assembly vessels, striking where they could, falling where they could not avoid the assembly's superior firepower. Aboard the Wanderer, Elena watched the chaos unfold on every screen, feeling every loss like a blow to her own chest. Issa's ship took heavy damage early in the fighting, forced to retreat toward the cover of the ancient ring's wreckage field. Orvosh's larger vessel, flagship of the escort fleet, traded fire with 2 assembly warships at once, buying precious time for smaller ships to escape the worst of the fighting. Captain, we can't survive this, Doran said, fighting to keep the Wanderer clear of incoming fire as the old ship shuddered under a glancing hit. We need to use the key. Now. Whatever it does, it's the only thing that might change this. Elena hesitated only a moment before nodding. Do it. Rana had already prepared the artifact, connecting it through careful, improvised wiring to the ship's systems, based on everything Tomas had managed to translate from the signal. As Elena gave the order, she activated it, and the effect was immediate and overwhelming. The great ring blazed to life, patterns of light racing across its ancient surface, spreading outward in a wave that swept through every ship in the system, friend and enemy alike. For a moment, every screen, every sensor, every system across the entire battle went white, and then, just as suddenly, returned to normal, though something had clearly changed. "Report," Elena said, her voice tight. "Captain," Tomas said, staring at his console in disbelief. "The ring isn't just a lock anymore. It's transmitting, broadcasting, across the entire region, further than I can even measure. It's showing everything, Captain. This battle, everything that's happened since we left Earth. It's showing it to every world, every station, every ship within range of the old network's remaining connections. Across 100 systems, on worlds that had lived under assembly rule for generations, screens and terminals flickered to life, with images no one had ever expected to see. A small, unarmed ship, fighting to protect what it carried, surrounded by allies from a dozen different species, standing against the overwhelming might of the assembly's finest fleets. The story that had traveled slowly, by whisper and rumor, for months, was now being broadcast directly, undeniably, to every corner of the old network's reach. Threx Valen watched the broadcast begin, from his flagship, with rising alarm. "Stop that transmission," he ordered. "Target the source, immediately." But it was already too late. Across the system, and far beyond it, the effect of the broadcast began to show itself in ways no assembly commander could have predicted. Ships that had been part of Threx's own fleet, crewed by species long conquered and quietly resentful of assembly rule, began to hesitate, then to break formation entirely. Some simply stopped firing. Others, in a handful of dramatic and terrifying moments, turned their weapons on their own assembly commanders instead. "Commander," Seth said, his voice shaking, "we are losing cohesion across the fleet. Auxiliary crews are refusing orders. Some vessels are actively rebelling." Threx stared at the chaos unfolding around him. The battle he had expected to win, decisively dissolving into confusion and division within his own ranks. For the first time in 100 years of service, he felt something close to true fear. "This is not possible," he said quietly. "Perhaps not," came a new voice, cutting into the command channel, aged and steady. It was Orvash, her damaged flagship still holding position near the ancient ring. "But it is happening, Commander Threx. Your assembly has ruled through fear and silence for 10,000 years. It seems that silence has finally been broken." The battle did not end quickly, and it did not end without cost. Many ships on both sides were lost before the fighting finally slowed, then stopped, as more and more of the assembly's own forces refused to continue what had become an increasingly one-sided and pointless slaughter against a fleet that represented, however imperfectly, a hope that had reached them all through the ring's broadcast. Threx Valen himself, faced with the collapse of his own command, ultimately ordered a retreat, gathering what loyal ships remained and withdrawing from the system, his 100-year reputation shattered beyond repair. In the aftermath, the Wanderer, badly damaged but still standing, drifted quietly near the Great Ring, alongside the surviving ships of its escort fleet. Elena walked through the corridors afterward, checking on her crew, checking on the still sleeping survivors in the cargo hold, feeling the strange, heavy relief of having survived something she had not truly believed they could survive. Orvash came aboard personally once the fighting had ended, her Cathari features showing the weariness of battle, but also something like quiet triumph. "You could not have known what the key would do," she said, standing with Elena on the observation deck, looking out at the ring that had changed everything. "Yet somehow, you brought exactly the right thing to exactly the right place." "I didn't do it alone," Elena said. "None of this would have happened without everyone who chose to help us along the way. Fessa, Is, your council. All the people who risked everything for a species they'd never even heard of a year ago." "Perhaps," Orvash said. "But it began with your choice, Captain Voss, to keep running, rather than surrender, and to trust strangers when trust was not an easy thing to offer. That choice mattered more than you may ever fully understand." Over the following weeks, the effects of the broadcast continued to ripple outward across the region, and eventually, across the wider galaxy as reports and rumors carried the story further than the old network's direct reach had managed alone. Assembly authority, already stretched thin across 10,000 years of conquest, found itself facing open questions and quiet resistance on worlds that had long seemed thoroughly pacified. It was not the end of the assembly, Not immediately. Not by any means. Empires that old did not fall in a single season, but it was, undeniably, a crack in a wall that many had believed could never be broken. Elena stood again on the Wanderer. His bridge sometime later, watching the great ring recede behind them, as the ship, repaired as best as Rana and her small team could manage, set a course onward, no longer running from anything, but simply choosing, for the first time in a long while, where to go next. "Where to, Captain?" Doran asked, his hands steady on the controls in a way they had not been in months. Elena thought of Earth, of the 47 survivors who still called the Wanderer home, of the strange allies scattered now across a dozen systems who had helped carry them this far. She thought of the long road still ahead, and of everything still left to build. "Forward," she said simply. "Let's see what's out there." The Wanderer moved on into the dark, no longer alone, carrying with it the quiet beginning of something the galaxy had not seen in 10,000 years. The simple, stubborn hope that even the smallest ship, crewed by the smallest and youngest of species, could cross the stars and change everything, one choice at a time.